Um, I'm a volunteer with MapAction. I've been with MapAction for I've been with MapAction for about 12 years now. So let me just find my Chrome. Um, and MapAction is an emergency response organization. Historically, we started off, I guess, more than 20 years ago, as an organization which was solely geared up towards emergency response. So we would get called out along with UN teams to emergencies around the world, typically earthquakes, hurricanes, flooding, volcanoes, really any kind of emergency, often at very short notice, 24 hours, 48 hours notice. And we would send out a team of 2, 3, 4 people armed with laptops and printers and network kits and set ourselves up in the emergency coordination center, working alongside other response organizations. So usually this would be the UN. So we'd be working with UN assessment teams, and that our role was really in those early days to go into a response and find out what's been happening, and what the scale of the response of the emergency was, how many people were affected, what the immediate needs were, how much funding was needed, and generally get information out about what was happening and what was needed. So that's something we still do. But over the years, we've also developed our offering to a much sort of wider set of services. So, for example, we do quite a lot of training. We work with partner organizations in countries around the world to develop their own GIS and mapping skills and information management skills, so that capacity can be reinforced locally to reduce dependence on international help. And we do that again with partners. We work with partners such as well as the UN, which is obviously international. We work with more regional partners. So, for example, an organization called SEDIMA in the Caribbean. There's a Central Asian organization. There's a Southeast Asian organization which comes under the remit of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So we have a much wider, more diverse remit now. And in recent years, we've also been working much more on what's called anticipatory action. Yeah, there are no slides, by the way. I'm just working. I'll show you a few screenshots in a minute, but we'll be looking at our own felt map shortly. So we've been working on anticipatory action, which is all about trying to look upstream of an emergency, making sure that systems are in place, putting systems in place which are able to anticipate emergencies before they happen. Now, of course, with some things like earthquakes, they're pretty difficult to predict, but with other things like flooding, drought, cyclones, it's often possible to know that they're coming, and also to know, not just when they're coming, but where they're coming. So let me just, sorry, let me show you a bit about MapAction. So you can look at the MapAction website. As I say, we've been working since 2002, and there's some videos and background there which will tell you a bit more about what we do and where we do it. The size of the organization is growing. We have about 30 or so paid staff, and we also have about 100 volunteers, of which I am one. So the core work tends to be done by volunteers, and these are usually GIS professionals working in a range of contexts. Some of them are in humanitarian work, but most of us are not in humanitarian work in our day jobs. We might be in government or commercial organizations or other non-profits or academics or whatever. So there's a huge range of expertise there. So the idea is that the organization can call on appropriate expertise as and when it's needed, in order to get people in the right place. So the typical kind of product we'd be producing, and historically, particularly for our emergency response work, we would produce static maps. So we'd go out, usually working with what used to be ArcMap, ArcGIS, and now we use ArcPro, and produce PDF maps. Distribute them locally. We take out printers, we distribute them to the other members of the response team, and publish them online on our website. We have a map repository on our website, which you should be able to find. So often these are fairly basic reference maps, to give people, because if you've got an international team coming into Madagascar, for example, they won't necessarily know the country, they won't know the names of the provinces, they won't know where the population is, and so we would produce these kind of maps, and also maps like these where, and you see in this one we've overlaid the storm track. This was Cyclone Freddy, which came through last year, to show what the effect was likely to be, what provinces what regions were likely to be hit, and what the population of those regions were. So some of our maps are quite sophisticated. A lot of them are actually fairly simple, and that's their strength, in that they're a quick way of sharing information with people who may not be familiar with the country, and I'm sure a lot of you are involved in mapping and understand the value of a simple map. So well, we had another picture here. So this was, and we have been working in Madagascar recently. This is some work I was doing in Madagascar in a couple of months ago in February, running some training, and this map, which you can't see. I'll show you an example of it on screen in a minute. This map is actually what we call a 3W map. It's a who, what, where map to show, to create a picture of the activity that's going on in different parts of the country, under various different sectoral headings. For example, health, water and sanitation, food security, and so on. And just to give you an idea of what we look like, this is a photograph that was taken on our, we have an annual exercise. We do a lot of training. This was our annual exercise last year in Scotland, and you can see there's about 70 or 80 people here, volunteers, staff members, mostly UK based, but some based elsewhere. We have some members in other European countries, and also we have 3 or 4 in the Caribbean who are permanently based in the Caribbean. So that's a bit of background to MapAction, just to give you an idea of what we do. So why are we interested in Felt? Well, as I say, we produce static maps, and that's historically what we've done. But clearly, as time has gone on and internet connectivity has improved and technology has moved on, there's a significant demand for interactive maps, for online maps, and an expectation that they will be available. So when we're working with ARC, we've got the opportunity to use ARC online. When we're working with other tools such as QGIS, that's not available to us, or not so easily. And ARC Online also clearly has a licensing cost, which in some cases is prohibitive. So when we want to produce maps like this and share them online, we have been looking for a while at ways in which we can do that without too much difficulty, and importantly, we can do them in a way which is easy for our partners to work with. And often our partners, while we have sort of 70 or 80 GIS professionals working in amongst our team, our in-country partners in Madagascar, for example, the organization we're currently working with, they have 3 members of staff. They have 1 member of staff who has a certain amount of GIS knowledge, but is not a GIS professional per se. So, we need to when we're working with them and trying to help them adopt appropriate tool sets, we need to be able to find things which are going to be easy for them to learn, easy for them to use and maintain. While Arc Online has a lot of fantastic functionality, it's not necessarily the easiest tool to pick up and use. And as I say, it also has a significant licensing cost. So Felt to us looks like a useful tool in order to help us make that bridge from our desktop tool set to a tool set that allows maps to be published online easily. So let me show you a couple of maps. We've got some, so I can find our, sorry, my screen's disappeared. My toolbar's disappeared. Okay, so something going on with Felt. Sorry. Just trying to find QGIS. Oh, there's my toolbar. Fantastic. So here's some data that we've been working with. This is what is what's called the vulnerability assessment tool, which is something which has been developed by our partners in Madagascar. And the idea of this is to have a set of some sets of data which show at a district level in Madagascar the number of people who might be able to who might be affected by a cyclone if a cyclone should come through. So in this example, we've actually got 3 categories. This is faible, which means weak, moderate, strong is 4. So we've actually got 3 layers here so that we can say, okay, there's a moderate or weak or strong cyclone coming through. We can overlay that on the map, and we can start to use some analysis tools in QGIS to determine the number of people that might be affected and where they might be affected. So the data set, just to give you an idea, is I can find my toolbar again. There we go. We've got a data set like this, which for each district says how many people are going to be, how many communes are exposed, what's the population that's going to be exposed, what's the population that might be affected. So it's a kind of model, it's a predictive model, which says based on historical information, we think that if a cyclone were to come through this district, this number of people might be, a weak cyclone, for example, this number of people might be affected. And there are similar numbers for moderate and strong cyclones. So it's a tool that our partners in Madagascar want to use to be able to plan their own response to incoming cyclones. So this is the map that we produced in QGIS. But the goal here is for our partners to be able to share this information on a regular basis, on an up-to-date basis, with their partners in Madagascar that they're working with. So we created a couple of maps in Felt, and let me go back to my. So this is what we've done in Felt. You can see we've got this vulnerability data uploaded at a district and region level. So what we're seeing now is the district level. And we've created some labels and some simple styling. And we've created pop-ups which show you for each district the number of communes. So commune is the next layer down of admin level. The number of Thokontani, so that's the bottom layer. That's the kind of village level, and then the number of people that are likely to be exposed if and when a cyclone comes through. So we've got that at the this is the layer which shows the week. If there's a weak cyclone, this is the one that shows if there's a moderate cyclone, and then below that is a stronger cyclone. So you can see that the numbers go up, not surprisingly, as the as the strength of the cyclone increases. What we can overlay on this is a storm track. There are no cyclones happily going through or expected in Madagascar at the moment, but here are some points from a storm track, and storm track data is readily available from various sites. We're actually using the Esri Living Atlas data, which includes some historic data as well. And this shows the points on the storm track and the wind speed and so on. So, we can see from this, purely at a visual level, without any kind of detailed analysis, we can see visually where the storm is going to go and what the effect is likely to be. And obviously, it's going to be, I think, during the course of this, predictive work will be done in QGIS to perhaps provide some more analysis, upload some more detailed layers which show what's going on and what the impact is likely to be. So our map for the moment is pretty simple. The goal really is to bridge the gap between these PDF maps and something which is much more easily accessible and updatable and shareable. We are interested, but haven't really explored too much other aspects of Felt, such as the collaboration tools, the ability to comment, the ability to interact with other Felt users, and also the ability to upload URLs. So to be able to take the URL of a storm track, for example, and to drop that into Felt, and so be able to see live or near to live data, so that people have got an updated version of what's going on. That's particularly important, clearly, as a cyclone approaches. So that was our first example. The other example is the 3W data, which I was talking about earlier. If I can just show you an example of that. Again, we're back to QGIS here, and this is a typical example of a 3W map. This shows for each district the number of activities going on under different headings. So there would be a key showing the meanings of each of these icons. But if we look at this one in this down at the bottom here, Ikongo, you can see that food security is the first one. There are two activities for food security. This one is shelter. This one is health, and so on and so forth. This one is water. So these will be familiar to people working in a humanitarian field, and this is a way of quickly being able to communicate from a planning point of view what was going on in each district, who was working there, what the numbers of activities were, and therefore feed that into the planning process and make sure essentially the goal here is to allocate the right resources at the right time to the right areas. So when we talk about 3W maps in the humanitarian response context, we're talking about who, what, where. Sometimes we talk about 4W, which is who, what, where, and when. And this is a very common product and a very common requirement, so that people know what's going on. It's really a way of sharing a common picture so that everybody knows what's going on. And we've created a felt version of this as well. Again, it's fairly simple. We've got total activities per district here, and these show the district where it only shows the districts where there are things going on. And as we hover, we can see for each district, we can get the detail of under the various headings, various sectoral headings, how many activities there are, and compare that with what we're seeing about the number of people affected, the information that we're getting in about what the needs are, and we can get a picture of that on the basis of we can look at individual sectors as well and say, okay, if I'm a health worker, I'm only interested in health. Let's look at what the picture is for health. So again, this is something where this changes frequently. This normally gets updated on a regular basis. So this would be a useful way of us being able to share data and update it regularly, without having to repeatedly generate PDFs, put them on our website, replace the previous version, replace the paper versions, and so on. And clearly useful for people that are, this is largely for people that are working in the field, working directly on the response, but it also gives an idea to people working elsewhere about what's going on. It's early days for us with Felt. We're experimenting. We're seeing what can be done. We're seeing what perhaps isn't there yet, but we might like to be there, and we've got some ideas about that. But it's we're not yet at the sort of full rollout stage. But we're more, I'd say, at the pilot prototyping stage. We're interested to see how it works with our partners. We're interested to see whether it kind of meets all our needs. But up to now, our experience has been good, and we're impressed by the ease of use. And I think we're looking at something where the ease of use, the barrier to entry is low for our partners who may not have a lot of GIS experience, but there is still a good range of functionality which enables us to, as GIS professionals, to be able to get the level of sophistication, the level of detail, the level of configuration that we're looking for, without a lot of effort, because especially when we're on emergency response in the field, we don't have time. We're under a lot of pressure. Information is changing all the time. Requests for mapping are changing all the time. So we need something which we're going to be able to get maps published, going to be able to use to get maps published quickly and effectively. They may not be beautiful, they may not be most sophisticated. The important thing is, it's no use getting out next week. People need it today or tomorrow. So time is really of the essence. So probably I should stop there, and I dare say there'll be some questions. So let me stop there and see if anybody's got any feedback or questions.
Totally. Thank you so much, Anthony, for this presentation. Really impressive to see all these maps and how you integrate in QGIS with Felt. I know that we had a little problem with our questions map. So, and I noticed some questions in the chat. I think the easiest way for us to go forward is just, if you have a question, please unmute yourself, and we will do our best to answer, either Anthony or me or Nora. So let's just do that. If you have a question, please raise your hand and unmute yourself. Okay, well, while we are waiting for some questions, I can also read from the ones that are in the chat. Carlos is asking, are there efforts to set standardization of procedures for humanitarian mapping? Anthony, I think this one is probably for you.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain standards. I mean, we have within MapAction, we have as I say, we've been going for about 20 years. So we've got a significant body of knowledge. We have our own knowledge base. So we have, standard operating procedures, which cover all our operations, including mapping. We have standard style sets, icons, cartographic approaches. Yes, there are standard approaches. There's a organization called OCHA, the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, which also acts as a standardization body. So they've produced, for example, a set of humanitarian icons. They're available online if you search for them. I don't think it's true to say that there is, when it comes to mapping, it's not something that is totally standardized, nor should it be. Every organization has their own goals and own requirements. There's a lot of information sharing, and there are certain conventions, I think, that people tend to follow. But beyond the sort of cartographic, a certain set of cartographic standards, there's there's certainly a lot of common features that you see, but it's more informal than formal standards, I think.
Please, thank you so much, Anthony. And there is a follow-up question about a methodology and if the data is available openly. I'm just curious, I think, just extending this question a little bit, is about what kind of data sets are you using? Is it public data sets? Is it something that you are getting from your partners? How does it work for your organization?
Sure. I mean, a lot of data is publicly available. There's a site called HDX, Humanitarian Data Exchange, which again is managed by OCHA, the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And so that would be certainly one of the main sites that we'd get data from. Data is often a challenge, both reference data and what you might call operational or situational data. We use data from HDX. OpenStreetMap is also a really important source for us, particularly in countries where official national mapping may not be either freely available or up to date. I think it's true to say that data is often difficult to come by. It's sometimes not freely available, even in emergency. So sometimes it's very challenging for us to get up-to-date data. But we're experienced in finding data, most of it open, from various partners from websites across the world, but equally a lot of data is generated locally. So we might be working with assessment teams who are going out, come back with a spreadsheet which tells us what's happening out in the field, and part of what our job is to take that data and to put it into publishable form and to share it. So and the other challenge of an emergency is that data is changing very fast. If a cyclone comes in, somebody's going to be affected today, and then different people will be affected tomorrow. People are moving around, people are being displaced, and maybe there's flooding which happens as a result. So it's a very fast changing and emerging situation. So this is one of the reasons why we tend to like to have a team on the ground rather than trying to work remotely, because it's only by being on the ground that you can literally get hold of data from partners and from what you see yourself. So yeah, data is always one of our biggest challenges, but we're reasonably experienced in getting whatever data we can.
Great. Thank you so much, Anthony. Are there any other questions? Just feel free to unmute yourself and we can answer. Okay, well, before we close out, or you can also post in the chat if it's a little bit easier. I actually have a question for Anthony as well. I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that before starting to use Felt, you guys were using a lot of PDFs and kind of sharing them back and forth. And now Felt is almost like a source of truth where you're updating data. I'm just curious a little bit more about like what the process is like right now and what it used to be, and if there are any benefits in this transition that you see currently without even tapping into like comments and more collaborative features.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I should probably distinguish between our emergency mapping and our non-emergency mapping. And in our emergency mapping, we have a process of publishing on demand, really. I mean, as and when data gets updated, we might produce a map on day 1 or day 2. Day 3, more data comes in or more accurate data comes in, we need to republish. So we'll publish a new version, export it to PDF, get it up on our website, and we've got a standard procedure for doing that. With Felt, we could envisage simply being able to update the data, update the map on Felt as it comes in. I think we'd like that to be a little more. We'd hope that in the future that process would be a bit more streamlined in Felt, so that we could update it without having to delete the previous version and reapply the styling and so on. But I'm sure that's something that I know that's something that's been discussed. So we're hoping that will come along in future. And equally, the integration with QGIS is great, because we can, again, rather than put a lot of effort into producing formal maps in QGIS, we can focus on the data in QGIS and then push up to Felt. And so I think it's definitely a time saver, but perhaps more importantly, it's a more accessible way for our end users to get hold of the data. People still like PDFs. People, we print maps out, and people like to carry them around with them, and that's nice. But that's becoming less and less of a necessity. Sometimes it still is, but it's becoming less and less of a necessity, because even in emergency, usually there's reasonable internet. So for non-emergency mapping, it's perhaps a bit of a different situation, because the time pressure isn't there. But again, I think it's more a matter of accessibility. We can work in QGIS, we can work in ArcPro, but in order to share that, we still have to go through a process of exporting. And as soon as you hit that export button, you're out of date. And it's hard to make sure that everybody's got the up-to-date version. Whereas if we're online, we've got a single online version, which is the latest version, and we can control who has access to it as well. I think that's a key thing. These aren't necessarily maps that people will want to share on the internet. They probably want to share them a lot of the time with selected partners. There are sensitivities about data sharing, and we have to respect those. And so the ability of Felt to control access is it's going to be an important factor for us, I think.
Perfect. Thank you for this response, Anthony. Oh, I see another question from Nora. And the question is, how easy was it to get to the Madagascar team in Felt and using it? Like, it's just a question about onboarding. Curious if
Yeah, sure. No, that's a good question. I mean, that's still something we're working with. It's still relatively early days. I mean, they really like the interface, and we talked to them about a number of options for doing what they wanted, which was to be able to essentially share a spreadsheet in a map form, and they really like Felt. We're still managing the process. Really, we haven't handed it over to them yet, but I'm confident that once we've got that process documented, and they were keen that we put together appropriate documentation for them, which was I think a reasonable and useful request, because it's very easy to assume as a GIS, somebody that's working with GIS all the time, that other people are going to be familiar with QGIS, familiar with online tools, familiar with styling and so on, and so we've put together some documentation which will help them to take things over. So we're hoping that in the next few months we'll be able to hand over to them, and they'll be able to take it forward.
Perfect. And I see Maria raised her hand. Maria, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this presentation. It's really wonderful to see this type of tools being shared. Is so useful in the humanitarian assistance context. And I'm a brand new user of Felt and of ArcGIS, and I just wanted to clarify maybe what are the strengths of Felt as compared to other tools. The way I used it is basically created layers in ArcGIS and then imported them in Felt, and that worked out for me in that opportunity. But and that seemed to be consistent with what I'm hearing from Scott, that maybe the strength of Felt is more in the sharing of one unique map with users on the ground. But I was wondering if you could explain a little bit if that's at all necessary, or if there's other ways of integrating data or layers that is more efficient than the one I use. So basically, I created in ArcGIS and integrated in Felt.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Felt team may want to comment on that as well. But I mean, perhaps just from my point of view, I mean, I've been working in QGIS, and there's a QGIS plugin which enables you to send a layer directly from QGIS up to Felt, and to some extent, although not fully yet, but to some extent, the styling is maintained. So that makes it a little bit easier than just uploading the data direct. And there are a number of tools that you can use with QGIS. I mentioned before that with Arc you can use Arc Online, but there are also other tools that you can use with QGIS, which we have looked at. But I think Felt is the one so far that we've seen which scores highly on both ease of use and also the functionality in the front end, and the quality of the front end. So we're looking for, it's relevant to the previous question really about how easy was it for the Madagascar team. We're looking for things which don't require a high level of technical knowledge. Sure, they require a degree of understanding of GIS, but don't require a high level of technical knowledge to use. So the integration for us, for MapAction, integration with QGIS, and again, we'd like to see it. I'm sure there will be tighter integration in the future and more kind of interoperability. But that was a big factor for us, and that certainly makes the process easier.
Thank you, Anthony. Nora, do you have any tips for people using ARC together with Felt?
Yeah, well, a few things. So first up, we support, uploading any type of spatial data file onto a map. So if you're working with shapefiles or GeoJSONs or even geo packages, geodatabases is what I meant to say. You can just drag and drop those onto a felt map. So we're completely compatible with those Esri data formats. But also, if you're ever working with an Esri feature server or map server, you can just copy those links, those public links on and paste them onto a felt map and load the data that way. So we really integrate with Esri enterprise data, which a lot of like larger public entities will use, those to host their data. If you ever see like an open data hub, then you're likely looking at some sort of feature server or something like that. So that's one way to get your data in.
Sorry, Nora, just to interrupt. Yeah, I mean, this storm track data is coming from an Esri feature server. So, these data points, that's it. That's just taken from a Esri feature server service. So we've used that here.
Yeah, and Rachel mentioned in the chat, like, can you upload GeoTIFF rasters? Yes, totally. You can upload rasters. It can be like satellite imagery, and you can also just upload and style a raster. So yeah, there's a lot of power behind the ease of use that Ant was discussing, right? You need something that's easy to use, but Felt is also super powerful in all the formats that it supports, and then all of those styling options that are at your fingertips. Just takes a few clicks to style the data the way you need it.
Thank you, Nora. And I think another thing that we haven't really shared yet, but I will drop a link in the chat. I think another key thing here is that we offer a non-profit discount. It's 20%. So if you fill in this form, I will share a link. You can also get it for non-profit use. So in any case, I want to open the floor for a couple more questions. We have more time if folks have any questions to ask for Anthony or for Nora. You can just unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay. We have a question from Carlos. I wonder if Google Datasheet with XY are updated on the fly when added to Felt. So when the sheet is updated, is also Felt map updated? No, not currently, but it's something that we're working on. As Anthony mentioned, where we know that one of the most common requests is updating data and creating live data. It's something that is definitely on our radar, and I encourage everyone to stay tuned because we'll have some updates coming in about that. So nice, that will be a game changer, says Carlos. Yeah, I totally agree. Any more questions, thoughts, pieces of feedback? We're really open to that. If you also have some features in mind or requests, as Carlos does. Okay, well, with that, I want to thank Anthony for presenting today and Nora for helping with the questions. We really appreciate everyone who attended today. We'll share the recording very soon for anyone who registered, and some key resources. So thank you so much, and stay tuned. We'll share some of the kind of places where you can follow us and get the most recent updates. Thank you so much.